Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Inside Movies Galore. I am your host for this evening, and here in the room I have Septum Sin and Kabuki Jake with me. This is the first time the three of us have actually deigned to get together to discuss some animated films. And Septum, why don't you tell me a little bit about the two films that we are going to be discussing here?
Well, the first one of these is Dead Leaves, which I brought up because of the caliber of film that we've been looking at lately. I thought this was a good follow-up to the Horny Rabbit horror. And then, of course, Cat Soup, which is one I've been trying to make sure that we get done on. So you got your copy, I'm glad to see, finally.
Yes, I did.
See, mine's this. My Cat Soup has this nice little red liquid in here, which has little kitties on here.
Mm-hmm. I've seen it. It goes for $80 online. So.
It's very pricey. They lucked out.
But this one I've definitely wanted to get up on the big discussion because of its art value and just its general strangeness. Yes. This one also, these are two of the known for their oddity.
Yes. I believe we were introduced to Cat Soup through a list of the strangest anime ever. Maybe. Yeah.
So I guess we could start with, which one would you like to start with, Cat Soup or Dead Leaves?
Let's start with Dead Leaves, and then we'll go from there. Since I know that Cat Soup is a short film, but it's got a deeper hidden meaning behind it. So
deeply hidden.
That's for those of you who are much more religious out there. So why don't we start with Dead Leaves? Can anyone say the director's name the way that it's technically?
Where is it supposed to be?
He can read out the name. He's good at the Japanese reading.
I'm trying to remember what it is, honestly. Did we have it listed on here?
It should have been on there. Well, it's something that can be looked up.
I believe it was Hayuku. She.
Well, I'm wanting to say this is Studio Gainax, right?
Yeah, Gainax.
Yeah.
And I am looking it up right now. There it is, and it should have the director there, so you can
production IG.
So you should be able to.
Kappei Yamaguchi, yeah. Hiroyuki Imaishi.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
close enough.
So it's a story of these two individuals that wake up not knowing anything about what's going on. So their natural inclination is to go on a crime spree. And after going on the crime spree, they get arrested. And lots of chaos and murder and sexy time ensues.
The way that I took it is that, okay, these two individuals, they wake up completely naked. I mean, completely. I mean, and the one guy has a TV for a head.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't know who they are. So they just, although maybe they know who they are, they just don't know exactly why they got there, and they don't really care because, you know, he's like, well, you know, does it really matter? So what? Kabuki Jake, why don't you tell me what you think? Why do you think that they chose to go on a crime spree right after
that? Who knows why these things happen? They just. I'm going to be honest with this one. It's been a minute since I've seen it, and I don't remember it as well as Cat Soup. I do know that the main thing that I remember was that it was frenetic, that there was very little downtime, and that it was freaking weird.
Oh, it was a straight action.
And it's a very colorful movie, very colorful. The animation's kind of
very
jarring,
fluid,
but yeah, it's kind of. Yeah, I'm not sure if there was a why. I probably did miss it. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Spring of the moment crime spree. Let's go get the cops chasing after our asses. Okay. Why don't you, Septum Sim, tell me why you think that they went on a crime spree right after they, woke up naked?
Well, from what I recall of it, and I rewatched part of it today, and then we got swamped at work because I was going to get it fresh in my mind, which of course is why I get swamped down with work when I'm trying. But from what I remember, it had something to do with a lot of their past and this kind of that just reflex to kind of fight the power that be at the time, and which is revealed more towards the end. It really reminded me of all those. You remember those old MTV cartoons, Liquid Television, those types of things, even Heavy Metal.
And various other animated series that were on Dragon Ball Z.
It had a lot of parallels to American animation in those veins. Like the just that general all action. Run by. Matter of fact, out of the ones that we've had, this is probably one of the closer, to my opinion, to one of the American animations like those.
It's kind of sad that in many cases, the ones that are most like American are the most twisted and disturbing, like Panty and Stocking.
Yes.
As they go on their crime spree, they end up getting chased by these Keystone Cop-looking characters. All of a sudden there's multitudes of these like Scotland Yard-looking policemen. And what do you think about the amount of police that were chasing after them?
Yeah, a little bit of overkill, I guess. Then again, they were doing a pretty good job with their crime spree at the time, so maybe it was
they were like driving all over the buildings in the background, kind of, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the future itself was more of a dystopian future where there was a lot of control. Of course, that was more fleshed out when they got to the prison.
Okay, and what did anyone think of the sea of faces and the almost emotionless eyes of the people before the explosions happened?
Well, yeah, reflection of the world that's in there. I mean, I actually believe that was more of a metaphor for current climates. Well, maybe not current climates for the time.
Yeah,
but maybe current climates. I mean, we've got a lot of apathy built out, and again, very dystopian in my opinion.
Moving forward, they ultimately went. They ultimately got caught. They were in a circle of fire, so they got sent to the moon. And evidently, on the moon, there is a base of operations there called Dead Leaves, which apparently there's a story going on in the background that I was trying to catch, where it's like there's this like tree and these caterpillars, and it kind of sounds like the tree of Xibalba, the Aztecian tree that I don't know if you remember the movie The Fountain, where he's like, I'm thinking that.
I don't remember The Fountain. I slept through half of it.
Well, I'm thinking this tree of life, except they're thinking caterpillars that reach and strike.
Right.
I don't know. It's just kind of a weird background story because there are similarities to contradicting theories of the spirituality behind this film. Whether there is a spirit at all.
Yeah.
What do you think about that background story that is being told of the caterpillars?
Well, I think the flashiness kind of threw that in the background so much that you really had to get multiple. I mean, I didn't think about it the first time I watched it. It's just there's so much going on in the foreground that I mean, There's a prisoner with a drill for an appendage, for goodness sakes.
Let's just say it how it is. Prisoner with a drill for a penis.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And of course, you've got another character who has, balls for a forehead. It's
Yeah.
I mean, there are various characters that make you think that okay, they get shipped to this moon. They're in a cocoon-like straitjacket. So you also have that that caterpillar story going in the background. So I just realized that it was more like a cocoon than it was more, and they were all being brought out in body bags. Kind of reminded me of like Killer Clowns with the cotton candy bags. But they were all brought out in hooks for meals, and there was kind of like a mining, unit where they were all mining something. And of course, what did you think of the? Was it the act of them having sex that sprung them from their chains, or was it in fact that they knew how to actually get out of their chains? What do you think?
Yeah, I remember that particular scene. And I thought it was a rather odd placement for the particular act at the time. I guess it was more of a, well, you know what? Nothing better to do at the time. Oh, sorry. And but I thought that it was a little bit of both. Probably Pandy probably could have undone it herself. She was more skilled in that area.
Okay.
Whereas I thought that Retro was a bit more just randomly violent when it came to his approach to things.
Okay. And after that, what do you think the prisoners, their cohorts that were listening in on the conversation, and all that jazz, did they have an almost godlike, look? Were they looking up at, the two characters as like some kind of pedestal where they were like, oh, cool, now we can follow them? Or they had that attitude where the Claw, he decides who will stay or who will go.
There was their place in that sort of revolutionary movement. I feel like their past had something to do with that. That's the problem when I haven't watched when I watched the first half and then didn't get to watch the last half. I watched it 2 weeks ago and now my mind is fuzzy on it. But I feel like there was something to do with the revolution, their past history coming back to show them, and them thinking this is going to be our road to freedom, our road to salvation.
Okay. And once these characters all like kind of banded together and started kicking some ass, what did you think about the how many like police there were, policing the prison, all that jazz? I mean, was that a little bit of an overkill there too?
What do you think?
If I remember correctly, yeah.
That was, I think it's just because we wanted more bodies to kill and chop up throughout.
I mean, don't you think that with all those bullets being put into those prisoners, they should have been dead by now?
It was an anime.
But ultimately, once Pandy started recognizing exactly, started remembering things, and Retro started realizing, certain things. What do you think of the background story of the doctor who had actually made sure that the original prison warden was actually dead, and ultimately they were just part of some experiment?
Yeah, well, that was something that did give me a bit of reminiscence towards some of the other movies we've covered here. Some of the dark experiments, some of the things, the little twists at the end, like for instance, making a genetic serum that changes people into furry sex monsters, things like that.
That was one of my favorite films of last year. Well, actually, it came out in 2015. It's just that particular edition of it came out last year. So I would have to say that's more of a favorite release, so to speak, of it. Raven Banner has put some nice releases out there for certain films out there, and I give them credits to what they have accomplished. For some filmmakers, this was at least one of my favorites.
I was curious how you would react to the appearance of the baby towards the end of the film, where they're in trouble and then the gun appears.
He was kind of a boss baby, wasn't he? He was kind of like a kick-ass, I mean, except he didn't have that, growly, Crowley voice, if you remember Crowley from the Supernatural. But definitely, I would be afraid of having children. That fact. I mean, all of a sudden you're in the room where the mother of your child is giving birth, and all of a sudden out shoots the baby. Oh my God! He's coming, guns blazing.
I'm wondering what's going on in the womb there, where he's got those guns stored away.
Yeah. All right.
That's one of the most American aspects of the film there,
That's where she was storing her extra guns. She just never.
Probably the more Americanized idea of the film that maybe we just shouldn't give children guns.
I do think that that's one thing that you'll see prevalent in a lot of anime. When they try to mimic American culture, one of the things that they seem to always say is they mimic violence in American culture. There was a series called You're Under Arrest.
Okay.
And there was a spin-off series of because it's about traffic cops in Japan. And it's a fun series. They do a spin-off where the two main characters go to America called No Mercy. Did you get to see this one?
I don't think I've seen that yet.
We're like regular American cops. Like, this guy is speeding. They pull out the shotgun and start shooting out the tires of the cars. It's going.
I feel like this
the more reckless of the two. She probably got into that.
I feel like this anime is in between a stop motion comic, anime, and in between like it's part stop motion and part animated. I don't know if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because you got the comic book feel, especially when the blasts come. You see the bang, boom, pow. The blast words. So you definitely have that manga feel to that comic book experience type of background.
To me, it's so unique. It's for a lot of those. I mean, you rarely find one like this series. This movie out there. There are very few that are quite this. I mean, it still hits top 10s of strangest animated.
Yes,
and I would say it's definitely out there in strange.
Was this on the one list that we were introduced to Cat Soup?
Yes.
Okay, I think it was.
Matter of fact, it was Cat Soup and that one when I was looking up Strange. When I was into Bobobo, which was another strange anime. And that's where I got
Fistafanos.
So, Cat Soup is actually a short film, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And do we know the director behind that?
Is that listed?
I should have actually been had that already ready and prepared.
You should have.
Because I'm just a bad film.
Director of the short film Cat Soup is Tatsuo Saito.
That's good. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Written by Nikajiro, the story-wise, and the screenplay was written by Tatsuo Saito him or herself. I believe it's a him. So
doesn't this just exude art?
It does in a certain way. But you know what? It kind of reminds me of the film that you introduced us to, Dodeska Den.
Yes.
Because in that sense, it is more, random thought process.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a sense that, I mean, there are things that it's not telling once the end credits hits, then you start to realize that, certain things are happening. So why don't you, Kabuki Jake, tell me what you think that this the meaning behind this short film is?
Well, again, when we're getting into meanings and themes and stuff, this was definitely one of those ones too that kind of left me puzzling my head, scratching my head a little bit. Mm-hmm. I know the basic theme of it is you get this little kitten's sister dies, okay, and then they're trying to figure out how to not have that happen. And it's very surreal. It does get into meanings of what am I trying? I can't speak to that. The themes of death and that sort of and that sort of thing. But yeah, I had trouble pinpointing exactly how to define this one.
It was a journey, a surreal journey about and you have to look at it multiple times. I've watched this one about 15 times.
15?
Yes, I've watched this a lot. I
can't claim that.
I actually really like it because
I had to rewatch this at least one more time just to see. And I have to say I did use kind of a cheat, but I listened to other people, describing what they thought. But then I also rewatched it myself to gain some knowledge of the film before we got on here. So go ahead and continue.
Well, I mean, there's so many nuances to this, but of course, just the basic story of family and closeness and just that love between siblings that exists, which is really hard to pick up on the first go, but it is but to me, it tackles it the way that Doskuden kind of failed, which was in Doskuden there was a lot of dragging in it,
and there was a lot of things that were left unsaid in Dodeskuden.
So this one, it didn't give you enough time to drag. It just kind of left you in this kind of feeling like kind of confused feeling, I guess, the first time you watch it.
Yeah.
And but it's sort of like an out of focus picture. But as you focus more, you actually pull in and you see that there are just all these subtle nuances within this. I mean, Japanese animated short film is an amazing. It's an amazing thing. I mean, one of my favorite Halloween ones is one where they were about a bunch of kids who are playing hide and seek, which actually is the
Kakarembo.
Yes, Kakarembo. Yeah. Where they are chased by this demon monster, and it actually is one of the more scary ones. Maybe towards Halloween area.
Not to mention mermaid scar.
A mermaid scar as well. But this one, just the surreal nature of it. I mean, remember the scene with the water elephant where they're going through the desert and they're working through that. Just in general, for me, the circus was my favorite of all of that. Just because of all the different imagery. I mean,
well, you got the storyline. You got the two cats, and they're basically like twins. Okay, and or they couldn't. They don't have to be twins, but they're identical. And the beginning of the short film, you have the brother cat. He's trying to play with his ship in the bathtub or whatever, and he basically drowns. And now the audience is led to believe that he actually is still alive, and he goes in search of his sister's soul. so to speak, but he's only able to get back half of it.
Mhm.
And from what I understand, he brings back the piece that he could bring back, and then eventually he reminisces on, you know, some of the things that the sister and himself have done or been through, and the choices that they've made in life. I mean, I went through an explanation of this, and from what I gathered, that there's a possibility of a similarity between two different floods from the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was one that God had through Noah, and that's why we see them on the boat. And then there was a second flood with Lucifer. So from what I understand, there's a religious aspect to this film. Now, according to the source that I went to, and from what I gather, that the elephant that came out of the circus, that could have been used to describe the religion of Buddhism or Hinduism. I don't know whether that could be true or not, or whatnot, but and then there's a second. There's two other deities that they mentioned, and the chair that you saw. That was explained as a possibility of being the throne or chair of Osiris, balancing the souls or whatnot. So there's definitely a possibility of references to different deities dealing with religion that are whether or not that these are facts or part of the fiction behind this short film. It definitely begs to reason that it's possible that there's a thought process that we're not seeing yet.
Well, isn't that though the beauty of art, is that sometimes it even transcends the artist? There are many artists and writers that had said, when people were talking about what meanings they found in it, the artist, of course, is like, I didn't mean that at all. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is without that. It's that there's interpretations. And like I said, that's what makes some of the abstract pieces like this so interesting to me, is to see that way. And unlike Duskadin, I didn't feel that there was any lull. Your mind gets too kind of what's the word? Your mind is overworking to make sense of it all too hard.
Yeah, I mean, just like when the cat comes out of his reverie, or so-called reverie. I mean, you see the father is daydreaming, and the mother is going through the motions of washing or doing chores. They're not exactly. The only motion that you see from them is when they go by the sister, who is laying in bed sick. So I mean, all throughout this whole process, you got these ulterior messages that have various meanings or interpretations.
Oh, most definitely. And looking at some of those other films that you had up, the other animated films, not quite as stylishly animated as these, but also it's just interesting when you contrast these types of styles, or even the two styles here. I mean, that's a slightly different style for each.
Yeah, I mean, each and every animation has its own style. I think. I mean, own structure. From what I've seen, I mean, I remember watching the Adventures of Unico and the Unico and the Island of Magic, and seeing the different styles there compared to some of the styles that I've seen in Vampire Hunter D. It all depends upon the differences. I mean, some are darker, some are lighter in nature. I mean, Unico was more of a lighter sense, although it seemed like there was a character that was somewhat Heathcliff-ish in Unico. So, you've got sometimes the Japanese culture sometimes imitates ours. In fact, I would almost say that there could have been some legalities in that case, but you never know. So, I mean, they're all different in their styles and different in their structure. I mean, every animation that I've seen, there's at least a little bit of weirdness. At least in some of the like Dead Leaves. That one was definitely out there. I mean, it had a it was kind of part action and part science fiction, and a little bit gorish. So it did have a little bit of gore because you had the blood splurt and all that jazz. It had more crank, if you know what I mean.
I think that was one of the reasons I didn't like it as much, wasn't it?
Yeah, yours was more of the because just the general gore and thing. It's sort of like that first scene, that first episode of American Horror Story Hotel, and that just really, and even to this day, I could not watch the rest of that season because
first episode.
Yeah, first episode. They just like went all out and just made it to where, okay, this is what you're going to expect, and then you're just going to
there are certain scenes in certain films that sometimes you're just going to have to turn yourself away from. I mean, there hasn't really been that many in my experience lately, but at least that would make me turn my head or make me go, ugh, I don't want to watch that, But I mean, I'm waiting for that film that will actually make me not want to watch it ever.
Well, there's always one.
But the more films that I see, the more that I get to chuckle at them, because there's a lot of really cool, beautiful films out there, animated as well as horror in general, and other films that are more Hollywood mainstream. But as you know, I mainly deal with independent horror films to an extent, but I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk with you guys about animation features or short films or whatnot, because then it makes me go outside of my box. I'm so used to being inside of this structured little box of what I'm used to. So it brings me out of my comfort zone, and it makes my film obsession more contemporary.
Oh, and isn't that the beauty of it? I mean, I've said this before, especially with something like Street Trash. I did not like Street Trash, but one of our other members loved Street Trash. It was a favorite movie.
I'm in the middle on that film. See, I watched it once, and I heard about how gross and grotesque it was, but you know what? As far as the melting substance, that's the part that I like the best. And and the penis tossing. That's that really gets.
The penis.
Yeah, just the casual. I mean, they have one of those scenes in every film. It's just how you execute it. That's the important part.
It's not exactly a spit on your grave, kind of.
Yeah. It's but that's the thing, is every film is a piece of art, and some people it'll hit a nerve but other people that same film will hit that nerve where you're just inspired. I mean, my favorite film of all time, Across the Universe, is probably one that's not very many people's favorite film at all. But
I loved it, but I thought, I thought it was underrated. But yeah,
but it's art.
So which one of you guys liked Dead Leaves, and which one of you guys liked Cat Soup?
Well, I can tell you which one he liked better.
I liked Cat Soup. I thought it was weird as hell, but I liked it.
Okay.
I honestly did not like Dead Leaves, but it does fall into that category of I'll give it another go eventually.
Okay.
But I own Cat Soup. I don't think I own Dead Leaves, and there's probably a reason for that.
Well, plus, it's cheap enough if you ever wanted to pick it up anyway. So.
Yeah, Dead Leaves is weird.
Yeah.
Cat Soup is not.
No. We like
even the other version of it's fairly expensive. I really like both of them. I really want to rewatch both of them. I need to watch the last half of this again so I can see it again. But Cat Soup still is my favorite out of the group, just because generally I enjoy the strange. If with life and reality as it is, and reality can be rather bleak. I love it when a film can just make my mind just malfunction to that point, to where everything else in life just disappears entirely.
Well, I'll be honest. I enjoyed both of them for different reasons. The first one because it was just so weird and so action packed, so over the top, and I mean you got a dude that has a penis that looks like he's got the drill head of that puppet master puppet. You got a guy that has balls for a forehead. You have a baby that pops out of a womb. I mean, these are things that I just cannot unsee. So
I'll never unsee the pistol coming right the hand.
For some reason, just my mind is still thinking about it, and I'll probably watch it again later on this, probably next week too. But you know what I suggest for us three to do next week? Pick a movie that you absolutely hate. Watch it. And then we'll come on and discuss it.
American Beauty. The problem is he likes American Beauty. I hate American Beauty.
I admit I need to watch it in the wake of the whole Kevin Spacey scandal, because I have not watched it since then. So
it is probably my least favorite film of all time. And it's one of the films I've seen the most. Oddly enough, I've seen it like 20 times, but I can't stand it. And it's just circumstances. People want to watch it because it's such a popular film, so I ended up being dragged along for it.
That's more times than I've seen the film. I've probably seen it only 7 or 8 times, maybe.
I've maybe seen it about 10 times myself. For some reason, it's either a film you like or you hate. I mean, it's got its moments of weirdness. It was a weird film, to be honest.
Yeah.
But what would yours be if your most hated film?
For me, most hated film.
What was that, Affliction?
No, I did not like Affliction, but I respected it. There were films that just sucked, and
Disaster movie.
Disaster movie was so bad I walked out of the room after 5 minutes.
That's how you watched it.
No, I haven't. I think I saw Epic Movie, and that was pretty epically awful.
That's a guilty pleasure of mine, Epic Movie.
I've seen a few that were awful, but I rarely watch a movie to completion if I really hate it.
Slam Dunk Ernest.
Slam Dunk Ernest is on that list. Norbit is on that list. let's see, The Lord of Illusions. I always hated that one.
I've yet to see that movie.
Yeah, I don't know.
Watch it. It's been a while for myself, but I own it.
See, I keep thinking Master of Disguise for some reason.
I do still own an unwatched copy of a movie I've only watched in bits and pieces. I do still need to watch Batman and Robin.
Another guilty pleasure.
But for what I've seen, it's pretty awful.
It's awful in a good way.
I was on a podcast not too recently where we did some of the Batman films, and I think we did Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, and they actually they actually liked it.
I kind of like Batman Forever.
I kind of liked what I found is that when I rewatched Batman Forever, I remember watching it here in Milwaukee in a theater that is now closed, and it was called Mill Road Theater, and there was some kind of department store connected to it, and we went in and we watched it, and at the time I really loved it because I was really into Jim Carrey. For some reason, rewatching it recently, I didn't like the Batman as much as I did when I didn't like Val Kilmer, because for some reason I think he's kind of a hack.
Oh yes. Well.
And although there have been some weirder films lately that that I actually like that he's in, even though I don't like his acting as of lately. It's funny because there are some films that I think that he really did okay on, and there are some films that I think he did a half-ass job. He just it was like, "Hey Val, you think you can just walk in on set just for a couple of minutes?" Okay. And he just walks.
Hey, a few million.
That was that first one he did as a secret agent, which I thought was hilarious. I think it was one of his first roles.
Well,
I can't think of the name.
But the one that always cracks me up is I remember this was way back in the day before I really read reviews. I remember reading a review for Batman Forever where the critics said that Val Kilmer was too cold to play Batman.
Well, and to me,
like, how are you too cold to play Batman?
Well, obviously, if you like the '60s Batman, that makes sense.
Personally, Val Kilmer has always been a pretty boy. And he's never been a badass biker looking dude. He's always been a pretty boy with a chisel face and kind of preppy. So
yeah, preppy.
Hard to see him as a badass dude.
Yeah.
But there is a film that I think you guys should check out for your channel called The Traveler. Which is one of his more recent films that I think you should check it out because he's got, I swear to God, he's got an eeriness presence in that film, and I suggest that you guys at least check it out once.
Traveler. How recent is that?
2010.
Oh, okay.
Is that what the one you're talking about?
Yep.
Huh. I figured out which one he would consider that. There's a horror movie. You might actually have seen it called Artifacts.
Oh yeah, that was pretty bad.
It's I think it's an Australian horror movie. Actually, this is one
wasn't it Belgium?
I can't remember what it was. It was one that we both agree on is a terrible film. I have a hard time letting go of my movies, in case you haven't been able to tell. But I had no trouble tossing that one aside.
Artifacts.
It was just so boring.
God,
dull.
That is that to me is the biggest sin in a movie. Is if I am bored. If I am bored, I cannot stand it. I will take a movie I hate, but I can enjoy. Well, not enjoy, but I can watch all the way through and not be bored over a movie that I'm bored throughout the entirety. That's why I can't stand Il Postino, which
I would choose from Troma, the Humongous Hungen. Or that one is so boring. Unfortunately, it's part of it's got a longer title than that, but it's got Humongous Hungen in the title. It's actually part of the Toxie triple features sets. So I'm not going to ever get rid of it, but it's it's up there with really, really bad.
The Troma stuff is too valuable to toss, or it's just.
I agree, especially since there are quite a few Troma films that I still have yet to collect, but they've never really fully been my focal point. But I definitely have the Toxic Avenger box set. I mean, anyone who's anyone at least has some of the classics that they've emitted for their stuff. So, but I would choose that one, or I would choose another one that I would say called Vampire. It's just called Vampire, and for the cover, it's got a knockoff looking Bram Stoker's Dracula cover. And it was.
This is not the Criterion Vampire. Right?
This is not the Criterion Vampire, which is a hell of a lot better.
Slightly different film there.
Right.
Well, I mean, there was a film that was known by two names called Mr. Jingles.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was SICK, which was the other film. That one used to be my least favorite, and that's an independent horror.
Yeah, I have, and you know that Mr. Jingles has a remake, right?
Well, there was Sick and there was Too Sick.
Mr. Jingles was
Speaking of bad movies, I gotta ask if you've ever watched Titanic: The Legend Goes On.
Yes, I have.
See, that's one that you need to do on the movies. The movies.
I have also watched Britannica.
Isn't that the third one?
The miniseries.
Oh no, the miniseries. There was a third movie. There was a third Titanic movie. They had a sequel to the cartoon.
Well, the Titanic that I like is from the 1930s, I believe, and it's the German Titanic because you've got the Nazis in there the actual Nazis that are on the Titanic. These are German. I mean, you're seeing it from the captain's point of view.
Yeah.
And it's even though it's subtitled and whatnot, I still enjoy the Kino Titanic version, even though I know you got the classic 1940s one, or you've got the sex rated. Actually, believe it or not, there was really no sex involved in Titanic with DiCaprio and whatnot. They just made it seem like there was. Of course, I watched Titanic 3 times in a row.
That's a hard one. That's a long one to watch in a row.
At the theater. I think my family wanted to go see it once, and then I went and saw it again because I liked the sinking of it. You know, I'm very
in a row, like back to back to back. You just went.
I'm very interested in the Titanic and what happened in the end of the Titanic. How it all played out from start to finish. That's why I read the Night to Remember.
The adaptation was good,
which was also a good movie.
I mean, they said that there were survivors of the Titanic sinking that watched that and said that they had gotten it down so well that they had to leave the theater at times.
Yeah,
because of it.
Then, of course, once the 100th anniversary of the Titanic came around, the last Titanic survivor died. So there's actually quite a few documentaries that I have dealing with the Titanic. I still have to track down quite a few Discovery Channel ones and all that jazz. But they ultimately think they know exactly what caused the Titanic sinking these days. In a documentary called 100 Years Case Solved or something like that. Very interesting documentary.
Well, I guess we should wrap up things. And we will have to do this again. We'll have to revamp our schedules and see what we can do. But it really was nice for us to do this collaboration. Finally, get the whole group on our team together to do this.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I mean, anything that you guys need movie-wise that you need at any given point in time, and you guys don't have it, well, try to see if I have it. So, in any case, you gentlemen have a great day, and thank you for coming on with me. This was
thanks
for having us.
And let's pick our worst film possible. And we don't even have to watch it each other. We just just come on and discuss them, and I'll ask some questions like I did here. So
let's set for 2 weeks. Does that sound good?
2 weeks.
That way we have time to think about it, and we'll have time to do. Does that sound like good for you? All right.
Cool.
Sounds good to me.
Cool.
All righty, gentlemen. You have a good afternoon.
Take care. All right.